Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here. We've got back-to-back high-impact days for severe storms, which includes some strong tornadoes. So we're going to break down the details for you in this update. Here is the latest advisory from the Storm Prediction Center. They do, in fact, have that elevated moderate risk for all three modes of severe storms. Later on this afternoon, we are going to be watching a dry line approach out in West Texas, along with a little shortwave. I think things get going right about 6 o'clock this afternoon. I think before that, we are going to be dealing with a stronger capping inversion, should limit storm activity. But after that, we've got all systems go. So for those areas into the Lawton region, back into the Oklahoma City region, into portions of Kansas, as well as into the Wichita, Kansas region, got to be on high alert for strong tornadoes later on this afternoon. It could even shift further south into the Wichita Falls, back into the Childress region and far west Texas. And as they shift further east, they will be weakening, I think, as we approach the midnight time frame. So before that, man, we've got a very muggy day ahead. I mean, look at the dew points. They're just surging in from the Gulf there. I mean, really elevated. We're talking mid to even almost some areas upper 70s and a very sharp dry line. Look at that 10 dew point in Amarillo and right in Oklahoma City, 72. That tells you the soupy air mass in the environment that we'll be dealing with later on this afternoon. And that is going to be pumping up these heat indices in a big way. You're really going to be feeling the mugginess out there with widespread triple digits for a good part of Texas and even 110 plus further south. Widespread 90s filtering further into the deep south. But turn your attention to this little activity here. This is around 6 o'clock. This is where I think the capping inversion finally kind of loses, and we'll start to see initial supercell thunderstorm development right near, say, the Wichita Falls region into the Childress region, with all three modes: large hail, very large hail, if not significant hail in some cases. And yes, those will be starting to rotate, and that will be the initiation of what could be unfolding of a tornado outbreak later on tonight. So yes, pretty concerning that these tornado parameters are hitting so high. I mean, the chart only goes to 10, folks. So once you get into these areas around Childress, into Wichita Falls, hugging the Red River areas, but especially there in Oklahoma and Kansas, wow, very concerned, because the atmosphere is prime for all three modes of severe storms. Now, they're going to be isolated, right? So, but they're big time supercells, and it only takes one supercell to do a lot of damage. And unfortunately, the environment is set up for some strong tornadoes of those EF2 type variety, and even some long track tornadoes. So right now, the Storm Prediction Center is highlighting that elevated risk. There was a huge area of a hatched risk. That implies you've got a 10%, a 15% probability within this red shaded area of seeing an EF2 type tornado or greater. That's what the atmosphere is calling for this afternoon. You can see further south across the Wichita Falls into the Childress region, back into West Texas, a little bit lighter amounts. But yes, once you creep over the Red River into the Lawton region, back into Tulsa, as well as into the Oklahoma City region, swinging north into Wichita, those are the more favored areas to seeing the highest probability of seeing strong tornadoes. Further north, once you get in the northern Kansas and towards Omaha, a little bit lighter activity, but still can't roll out a tornado or two up in your neck of the woods either. So here is I think what's going to happen and what's going to unfold if we do zoom in. This is this latest high resolution guidance. I mean, you see this nastiness, right? I mean, it doesn't take much. Once this cap erodes and the supercells start to fire 60,000 feet up in the atmosphere, these are intense, folks. That could be producing some baseball size hail at that point within the Childress and the Wichita Falls region. I think these are going to be seeing upscale growth as we head between the 6 and say 11 o'clock time frame through Oklahoma, far northwest Texas, and into the Kansas region. So if we look at the supercell composite on the surface-based supercells, yeah, we're looking at more widespread activity starting to bubble up, originating right there across Childress into the Wichita Falls region, but then upscale growth through Lawton, areas into Oklahoma through Tulsa, getting into the Wichita, Kansas region, and those will be moving eastbound as we head towards 6 into that 11 o'clock time frame. Those are the time frames you definitely be on high alert. So if we kind of zoom in, say around 10 o'clock tonight, we should start to see supercells coming out of those regions into Lawton, into western, Wichita Falls, as well as into Childress, and now entering far northern portions of North Texas around the Red River region and crossing over into those areas into southern and southeastern areas of Oklahoma and fishtailing across Tulsa, getting into central Kansas by then, as well as into central Nebraska, with all three modes of severe storms. Very damaging winds. We're talking winds 70, 80, maybe in upwards to 90 miles an hour again later on tonight. And it's definitely concerning once you kind of zoom in to look at some of these helicity tracks. And we'll look at both of these. We'll look at the HRRR as well as the NAM3K. And you can see it only takes a couple of supercells, but once this supercell lays down the groundwork with some larger hail and possibly a tornado, they could be on the ground for an extended period of time. So it's very concerning that you see these long track, right? So that implies those could be some larger hail producers, or even a tornado that will be traversing across just the northern areas of North Texas, right along the Red River areas. And then another pocket of concern would be right there across the southern portions of Kansas. That is very concerning. And if that actually plays out, that would be a significant long track tornado. But you can see the natureness of these supercells. We could be looking at a couple supercells, but those couple of supercells could be really nasty and produce some very significant large, if not almost giant hail in these cases, maybe even up to softball sometimes at times. And some of those stronger tornadoes, even long track tornadoes. Here's the difference between the HRRR and the NAM3K. You can actually see the placement's a little bit different. So each run's going to be different, but this whole environment is going to be prime for supercell development. Yes, it will be fighting a little bit of a capping inversion at times, but where it's going to be able to poke holes in that capping inversion, that's where you have to be on the lookout for all three modes of these supercells activity. Very damaging gusty winds, straight line bow segments, very large hail, and yes, tornadoes. And some of those could be strong tornadoes, if not some long track tornadoes. So if we break down the next 24 hours on the wind gust, yes, these could be significant once they start to form coming out of the Childress into the Oklahoma region. Yeah, very rare to see these print out over 100 miles an hour. I mean, the atmosphere is prime tonight for a large-scale supercell thunderstorm. So it's going to be coming in quick, about 6 o'clock. And I think that time frame between 6 and 11 is definitely going to be on a bumpy ride with all three modes of severe storms. And likely it's going to be starting to fade a little bit once we get toward the midnight time frame. But it's not going to end there, because it's going to continue to traverse across to the east. And by the time we wake up on Sunday morning, that low pressure centers continue to be kind of intensifying across Missouri, and we could be looking at more severe storms highlighted across Missouri, getting into Iowa, portions of Wisconsin, back into Illinois by then, and they're going to have their own severe risk for severe storms. So right now we do have that elevated enhanced risk for the strongest potential of very high winds, larger hail, and some strong tornadoes as well within the Indianapolis region, back into Springfield, into St. Louis, as well as into Paducah, back into Nashville, getting into Jackson, as well as Louisville, and Cincinnati. This could actually swing further north, like I showed you with that convective morning complex. Further south would be more or less in the afternoon time frame. And then further south as you get into Memphis, back into Little Rock, as well as into the Huntsville region, and then far areas of North Texas, getting into the southeastern corner of Oklahoma. So if we break it down for you, here's as you wake up on Sunday morning. So we're going to be watching a convective complex coming out of Nebraska and Kansas. That's going to be swinging across Iowa, portions of Missouri by then. That leading edge is going to be right along into Wisconsin, western Illinois, as well in southeastern portions of Missouri. Those could pose their own severe risk, very damaging wind, some larger hail mixed in. and an isolated tornado or two within that atmosphere. And then goes into the noon time frame, that mesoscale complex will be shifting across. So lighter amounts swing up further northeast back into Wisconsin, heavier amounts swinging across with some gusty winds, some larger hail mixed in with this activity towards Indiana, back into Kentucky, getting into southern portion of Illinois by then. But I think by the time we head into that, 5, 6, 7 o'clock time frame again, as we head into Sunday, that's when things get a little bit more significant with that second round building back. So we'll have that first round trying to phase out across portions of Kentucky, back into Tennessee, western Tennessee, but then we'll have a new line of thunderstorms approaching out from out west, back into Missouri again, as well as into central Illinois. And those are going to be posing their own severe risk with all three modes as we head into the evening time frame towards that midnight time frame with the squall line, pretty nasty squall line approaching those areas into Arkansas through western Tennessee by then, western Kentucky, getting into much of Indiana, and then eventually heading into western areas of Ohio as we head into that midnight time frame. So if we break it down over the next 48 hours on these helicity tracks, it's going to be a bumpy ride for the next 48 hours as we're going to be watching large-scale supercell thunderstorms kind of originate along the dry line, set up a boundary, and could produce some larger hail and some damaging tornadoes in its path. It could be a couple cells, but some of these could be some long track tornadoes, and that's the very concerning aspect of this environment later on this afternoon into the evening, heading into tomorrow time frame. And as we get into tomorrow, that goes into Missouri, back into Illinois and Indiana, and then the heavier amounts into Kentucky, as well as into Tennessee. You can see the difference on the triple, the NAM3K. The placement's a little bit different, but definitely see there's a numerous updrafts across this region over multiple states, and has the capability of dropping some larger hail and some tornadoes, and some of those could be significant tornadoes. So as we head into Monday, things wind down a little bit, but still the storm threat shifts off to the East Coast. Now we have an elevated risk for those areas across Charlotte, back into Raleigh, getting into Greensboro, as well as into the Richmond region, into Norfolk, and DC, and up into Baltimore, as well as into Philadelphia. Those could pose their own stronger wind gusts, likely some 5 mile per hour, and some quarter size hail. Can't even rule out some very pockets of ping pong size hail mixed in one or two of the larger storms. But further south, you are going to be just seeing a more of a marginal risk with more of a kind of a squall line, and these are more of a wind threat posing into southeast Texas through Louisiana, as well as into Mississippi and Alabama, getting into Georgia, as well as into South Carolina on Monday. So overall, I think things calm down as we head into Monday, but still you're going to have some clearing on the backside once this moves through. So Monday should be a nice day for a good part of the country. Those areas across the East Coast that will be impacted with the more of a stronger wind gust with these situations, and some larger hail further north, especially as you get towards Virginia, going into the region. Like they could have some quarter size hail mixed in with that activity as that low pressure continues to move off the East Coast by then. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Definitely stay weather aware of the next 48 hours. Make sure to like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch my next update. I protect you before and after.